All right, hello again, fellow coder. Welcome back to this FreshVotes series, where we are creating a Java web application from scratch. And in this lesson, we will dive into what I spoke about in the previous video, which was a bug that I had found. And maybe if we have time, we can get into some minor cosmetic workflow type stuff. But we'll see where we go from here. So the bug I am referring to is this. So when we go into our database and we select star from the products in our database, you see that we have a few products. I know that the font is a bit small, but we have 3 products that are associated to different user IDs, either user ID 1 or user ID 4. Now, that's all well and good, but if we go into, say, user or product number 1, which is associated with user ID 1, and we make any changes or whatever, it really doesn't matter. If we just say save the product, so if we say save, and we go back to our database and refresh, we will see that the user ID is not persisted. So we persist all the other data, but we do not persist the user ID data. It gets blown away, which is a bug. So in my opinion, there's 2 ways to fix this. We'll see which one works and where we can go from here. So inside of so basically the workflow is when we post to the products/product ID endpoint, this is where we do the save, and this is essentially where the bug is created. And it comes from right here. So I'll inspect. Well, first of all, we almost would have seen the bug if my system out print line for the product had worked properly. In our console, we see our product is listed, is outputted to the console, but this is not really human readable. This is not helpful. So really, the first thing that would be most helpful is for entities, I find it's helpful to override the toString method to be something more human readable. So if we go into our product class, we can scroll into the bottom and we can add we can do some source code modifying here, and we can say generate a toString method, and we can choose which fields we want to include inside of our toString output. So I'm just going to generate the default and show me everything. So this just creates an overridden or overridden toString method that outputs the details of the product into a human readable format. Okay, so my server will restart. Let me refresh the page and let me log back in, and I will say save for product number 1. So now we will see here a more human readable version of what's going on. And we can see right here, user equals null. So when we go to save right here, first we do the output and then we save, you can see where it's coming from. The user is null. Okay, so there's 2 things we can do, 2 ways to fix it. One way is to fix it right here, right before we save, we make sure to add in the user that is associated with this product. Okay, and that would work, but if I can, I want to get to the root cause of the issue. And the root cause of the issue is the product being passed in does not have a user associated with it, even though it should. Okay, so where is that coming from? Well, that's coming from the actual product HTML page itself. And we are not anywhere in the form are we associating a user to this product. Okay, and again, they're on the page itself here. It wouldn't be helpful to anyone to show a user associated with this product from a presentation sort of aspect. It wouldn't make sense to show the user. So what we can do instead is we can insert, just like we did here. Just like it wouldn't really be helpful to show a product ID on the presentation layer. What we can do is we can add another input type hidden, and we can associate a field, a product.user, to this particular guy, this particular situation. So I'm not sure where this will work. I don't tend to do this, but I feel like since the time leaf code is a little bit powerful, this might work. So if I do let me inspect the code. Let me do a view page source. So the user value is empty, so it doesn't look like that worked. Now, why wouldn't that have worked? When I go to product here, products.id, I do a find by, and if it's present, I put it onto the model. So I feel like well, we need to see right here if the product that is loaded from the repository has a user in it or not. Let's put a breakpoint right here. Let's stop the server and restart it in debug mode. Let's just have a gander at when we do the get mapping to see if when we place the product in the model, does it have a user associated with it? Yes or no? Let's go ahead and refresh. Log back in. And let's see here. So when we're loading the product from the database, does it have a user associated with it, right? So let's hover over the product here. And there it is. So there is the actual real, well, part of the bug is right here. The user is not loaded, okay? And there's a pretty good reason for that. And I believe, I can show you, in the product itself, the product entity. So in here, we have a many-to-one to a user. So the product is associated with a user, and it's right here. And if we go over to the user field, we will see that the user's products is set to be lazily loaded. Okay? So in other words, it won't load any products with a user, and it won't load any users with the products unless we ask it to. Okay, so this is good. We actually this is the behavior that we want from it. We don't want it to fetch, all the products anytime we load up a user, because then it gets a little bit hairy. So really the root of the problem is we need to make sure that we load up a user when we are loading up a product. And there's also a few ways that we can do that. So how do we want to move forward? Well, one way is, I'm not sure, actually, I've never really done this either, is can we set it to eagerly fetch on one side, but lazily fetch on the other? That's actually an interesting question. I don't know if I've ever done this before, but it potentially could be possible. So, but the side effect here is I want to make sure it doesn't eagerly load the other way around, right? I don't want to eagerly load. I don't want to always load all the products associated with a user anytime we load up a user. So we'll have to peek into our SQL queries to see what's going on. But loading one user when we load a single product, is not a big deal, in my opinion. So let's refresh, log in. We can see, first we see if the page source has anything for a user. So the value is still blank. I might have restarted not in debug mode. I want to go back to here and set a breakpoint and see if we actually have a user that's loaded, just to see if this even is a valid way to solve the issue. Okay, so let's see if the product has a user with it, and no, it does not. So it doesn't look like you can do that. It doesn't look like you can eagerly fetch from one way and lazily fetch from the other. I guess that's not the way the cookie crumbles when it comes to Hibernate. It doesn't allow you to do that. So that's okay, no worries. I just wanted to see if that worked. And I mean, potentially, maybe there is a way to do it, and I'm just doing it wrong. I don't know, but that's okay. Because the other way, the more appropriate way to do this, of course, there's many ways to solve any problem, but one of the ways that I typically do this is I create a different query, okay? I create a different query when we are querying for a product, okay? So in our product repository, where is that? Right here? In the product repository, we can create a new query that gets, when we fetch a product by ID or something, it also does a join with the user table. In other words, it brings in and populates that user value. So for example, when we are querying, we're saying find by ID here, right? The product repo is find by ID. So we can create another query. Okay, this returns an optional product. So we can create another one that returns an optional product, and it's a find by ID with user, for example. Okay, and we can say long ID, because I believe it needs a product ID. Obviously, if it's find by ID, we're using a product ID, but find by ID with user. Okay, and it returns an optional product. Now, if I save this, I wonder, yeah, it's going to complain, right? It's going to complain because from our previous video, I talked about derived queries and the fact that the find by prefix is something special inside of the Spring Data architecture, right? If we say find by, then it's going to try to find something, a property with the name ID with user, and that's not how this works. So one way to do this is you just override it with a special query of your own. So you create a custom query. So this is how you define custom queries inside of Spring Data. Okay, you define your own query. So you can say select, normally you'd want to say select star from, but you actually need to use something called the Hibernate querying language. So instead of saying select star from, you need to say select an alias. So I think here we say select P, or you can call it whatever you liked, but I can say select P from product, and I'm going to call it P. That's the alias, right? That's where this P comes from, is the alias that I assign to this entity. And note that this is an uppercase P here, and that's on purpose because I'm using the product entity. And then I can say where p.id equals, and I can say ID because that's what we're passing in. And then I can say join fetch p.user. Okay, I believe that's how I do that. So this word fetch is very important. Join fetch means grab the user data from p.user, and I can say p.user because product has a user property. Okay, that's where that comes from. I can say join fetch p.user, and what that will do is it'll say, hey, join to the user table and bring in that information back into the product. In other words, we're eagerly fetching the user, but we're not eagerly fetching it because we have to manually type in, hey, we want this user data to come in whenever we happen to execute this query. Okay, so that's one way to do it. That's one of the ways. There might be other ways to do this with some derived queries without using a custom query like we did here. There might be a way to do it with a derived query to do a join, which is a good question, actually. I might as well ask that question to Google so you can see how a programmer would ask that question. So Spring Data derived query with join fetch, something like that. That might be how I ask that question. Joining two table entities in Spring Data JPA. Let's see. Join column mapped by. Oh, geez, this is a whole lot of. So there's left joins. That's all. That's not derived query from what I can ascertain from the response. I don't see a derived query. These are just entities. These are not. So it's showing me how to do just joins. Query for join. So I want Spring Data derived query. Maybe derived query methods. Defining query methods. Find by. Yeah, you can do greater than and less than, that kind of thing. Some examples, but for this guy I don't see anything with. So anyway, there might be a way to do this, but I'm not sure how to query for it. And again, I don't want to waste time here. So this is definitely a solution. Okay, so great. We have defined our own custom query, our own custom method that returns a custom query. But now we need to actually use this custom method that we've created with a custom query. Okay, so when we go back to the place that caused the problem, which is right here, instead of saying find by ID, we're going to say find by ID with user. Okay, and that's going to return an optional product and blah, blah, blah. So hopefully now when I reboot the server in, hopefully it's still in debug mode. We'll see if this turns into a checkbox here, or a little check mark. Oops, we've got a syntax error maybe. Unexpected token near line 1, column 64. Select P from product P where p.id equals blah. Oh, I put the join fetch in the wrong place. Duh. Sorry, guys. So select P from product P. You need to join fetch before the where clause. Oh, you people might have been screaming that at me. So, proper SQL grammar dictates that you do your joins before your where clauses. My mistake. I did not do my join before the where clause. So now I am. I'm doing the join before the where clause. So let me fire up my server again, see if I get any compilation errors. Boom, bada boom, bada boom, boom, boom. Okay, now there's no compilation errors. So let's see if I reload this products/1 endpoint, and hopefully it'll hit my product with ID 1 was not found. That's an interesting, because it is there. Am I searching by user ID? Where's my code? No, I'm just passing in long of ID. So that went into here then, and it didn't. So this query must have been wrong. It must have returned nothing is what it did. So product OPT is empty. So let's see why that's empty. Let's clear my console here, refresh the page. So here's the query that it generated. So let's look at the query that it generated, because maybe that query that it generated is not a good query. Paste this into my workbench and just sort of organize this a little better. Okay, so let's see what it's doing. It's selecting some stuff. So it's selecting a product ID, it's selecting product name, it's selecting published, and it's selecting user ID. Oh, and then it's also selecting the user password and everything. So it's bringing in the password stuff, or the user information from products, inner join users on user ID equals ID, which looks okay. And then where product ID equals blah, which we're passing in 1. So this, you're telling me, returns nothing. Interesting. So, why is this query incorrect? Let me just go back to the actual repository, select P from product P, join fetch p.user, where p.id equals ID, which is coming in from here, which I feel like is fine. Join fetch p.user, which resolves into an inner join. I'm feeling like the inner join is what's messing stuff up. Product user ID is equal to user.id, which is correct. So did I blow away all the data on the products? No, there is one that should have returned at least one row. It should return this row because it's associated with the user ID 1. So why would this inner join not? Oh, because we know that right here, because the product ID 1 doesn't have a user ID to it, right? Associated with it. If I change this to product ID 2, this should return a row. There we go. Whew. Okay. Sorry, guys. So that was just the bug. That was the bug. That was the data issue that was present. If I switch it to product ID 2 and say go, when I go to the breakpoint, wherever the breakpoint was, hold on, let me find where we are. So this should have a value. Oh, it doesn't have a value. Why doesn't this one have a value? Come on, people, work with me. Okay, so that one works. So products/2, when it does the query, it returns the product. Okay, beautiful. So that was just a weird little hiccup there. I had to... Anyway, Java just sometimes behaves a bit strangely, and sometimes you just can't explain it. So product 2 works, but if product 1 has the data issue still. So let's go to product 2, and let's click the save button. So if I click save, or rather, hold on, let me look at the source to see if... There we go. So yeah, the user has a value now. The user has a value of 1. So if you think way back to the beginning of this video, 20 minutes ago, in our product page, we added this code. We added input type hidden, and the th field is product.user. In other words, we're saying, hey, don't forget to also populate a user value when you submit this form, so that it will remember to also save this user back into the database, right? So if I say save to product ID 2, hopefully the user value is captured. See? Product, ID2, name, product 2, user is now captured. So user inside of the product has a value because we loaded it up. Okay. Now you can see it gives you a bunch of extra information like authorities for the user and whatnot. And this is where queries can get, this is where things can get bigger, right? When you have a whole, this is why you don't eagerly fetch everything. You only fetch what you need, and you choose what you need via different queries that you create, like so, right? Which is what we had created. The find by ID with user is what I called it. Now this whole with user business is just a convention I use. That's not a convention that's global, I don't believe. But basically what this tells me is it's finding a product by ID, and it's also including the user join. Okay? And maybe there's, like I said, maybe there's a better way to do this, like find by ID, join, fetch, user. Maybe that's a better name for this method because that better describes what's going on. Like I said, this is just the convention that I tend to use is I use the word with. I can't guarantee that that's the best way to do this. All I can say, this is what I do. Okay, I tried to do some Googling to find out if there was some convention around join fetching with derived queries. I couldn't find anything in this little Google session, query session that I had, but who knows? Okay, so now that works. So now if I go back and let me fix the data issue for product, the first product, so that I won't hit that scenario I ran into where the product had said it couldn't find it. So products 1, there we go. So now it finds product 1. If I say save and I check my database, user ID 1 is still there. So we're still able to log in, or sorry, we're still able to properly view our product as expected, which means if we go back to the dashboard, we should still see 2 products listed on our dashboard. So there we go. We were able to fix our bug. Fantastic. Now we can move forward. So where to go from here, right? Well, I think I might want to do a quick video on the home page. I just want to add a simple workflow where we can log in from this home page. There's no login button. So now what I need to do is manually type in /login to go to the login page, which is kind of annoying. So just a little workflow fix up. And then what we can do is maybe also while we're doing that, we can make this page look a little prettier. So maybe for the majority of next video will be how to make this page look a little prettier because it's a little bit ugly. Yeah, we'll go from there. So thank you so much for joining. Always a pleasure doing these coding sessions. You learn so much. So I can't wait to see you in the next lesson. Take care of yourself. Happy learning, and bye for now.